Sudanese novel History and Development الطيب صالح 1929-2009 طيب صالح and Politics. Dear audience, we have now reached the final stage in our presentation of our great and internationally renowned novelist طيب صالح within our series dedicated to documenting the history and the development of the Sudanese novel. Today, we meet him as we enter his political world, a world that remained present with refined awareness throughout his writings, where he made the language of dialogue, tolerance, and reason central tools in addressing human and national concerns. In this episode, we seek to move closer to his vision, to uncover the contours of his intellectual path, and to explore how he regarded politics not merely as a struggle for power, but as a moral and cultural question that touches both the individual and society. Did الطيب صالح belong to a specific ideology? Was he closer to the right or to the left? Or did he choose to stand in a broader space that transcends narrow classifications and designations? Together, we will attempt to examine how Sudan's political and social transformations were reflected in his literature, and how he articulated questions of power, identity, the city, and the human condition through a narrative language that combines depth with simplicity, critique with contemplation. We will also pause at his positions, statements, and readings of reality in order to understand how he shaped his stance toward a deeply unsettled world. So, dear audience, it is my great pleasure to welcome you once again to this new and unique episode, a conclusion one, as an episode of dialogue and open questions, which we hope will shed light on an important dimension of الطيب صالح intellectual and creative experience. So, dear audience, this is the final encounter with our renowned Sudanese international acclaimed novelist الطيب صالح. And in this episode, I would like to wrap up, I would like to conclude, and our conclusion will focus on his stance and position from politics. And as we have presented his literary texts in our previous encounters, just here I would like to make a summary based on our intention to provide to the viewers and listeners the stance of الطيب صالح from politics. So the question of the ideology and belonging is so present whenever people started to speak about this renowned and prominent novelist. So in this episode, as I told, I tried just based on some academic sources to answer, as well as some interviews that have been carried out and have been carried out with a novelist himself. Based on these sources, just I would like to introduce and to present part of the politics and الطيب صالح. Politics issue and الطيب صالح as have been expressed partly in his novels and short stories. So from the earliest beginning, I would like here to provide you, the audience, the chance to listen to الطيب صالح himself, that he is narrated his relation to politics from earliest of times. So in this part, listen to him while himself speak about his relation to politics and belonging. to his own words. In fact, from secondary school onward, I distanced myself from following any party, although at that time it was not an easy matter. When we were studying at Wadi Sayyidina Secondary School, the conflict was at its height between the communist and the Islamist. Back then, I performed my religious duties and maintained my faith, but I was not religious in the political or ideological sense of the word. I attended the meetings of both the Islamist and the communist, and I was inclined towards speaking in literary societies. So we listened to him while he is speaking about his experience with politics while he was in secondary school, in Wadi Sayyidina Secondary School in Durman. He informed that he never joined any political party, while he has his own, she has shared Islamists as well as communists their own meetings, and he informs that he is so very active throughout the literary society's activities in the school. Some writings by members of the Muslim Brotherhood in their efforts to document the history of the Islamic movement have sought to baptize Tayyib Salih as the brother and among the early founders of the Islamic movement at the University of Khartoum. Such claims, however, are not grounded in historical facts or documentary evidence, as much as they rely on personal inferences and interpretations of certain individual statements. These readings typically draw on Salih's commitment to religious practice during that period and his relationship with individuals who later become members of the Islamic movement. On the other hand, one finds no comparable claims in communist writings suggesting any organizational, intellectual, or literary affiliation between Tayyib Salih and the communist or the Marxist socialist left. Indeed, it may be said that a broad segment of the Marxist left remained enthusiastic, if not openly critical, of Tayyib Salih and his literary work, despite the existence of ample documented evidence in his writings and biography pointing to his socialist leanings and his intellectual and political sympathy with the broader left. Tayyib Salih repeatedly noted in many interviews when reflecting on his youth that he and politics were never fully compatible. He was not particularly enthusiastic about it. During his university years in Sudan, when he met with politically active student groups out of curiosity rather than affiliation, he did not persist in listening to their discussions. To quote him, while he is telling his experience with politics while he was a student in Khartoum University, we used to sit on the ground in the university square. We used to sit on the grounds in the university squares talking about many things, exchanging views and ideas. After a while, I no longer joined them. I left them and went my own way. Still the speech to him. It appears that his migration, so this is the view of the writer of this article, it appears that his migration to Britain greatly helped him detach from direct political influences, allowing him to inhabit a wide space of freedom that he had neither expected nor dreamed of. Yet, he remained deeply loyal and emotionally connected to his homeland. To his own words, I love Sudan dearly, of course. My loyalty, as I always say, is to the nation in its ongoing and enduring becoming. This is an eternal commitment. Tayyib Salih believed that politicians' views change according to circumstances and political fluctuations, and they often expect the intellectual to change with them. That is an exhausting matter. A clear example is Ja'far Nimeri. Ja'far Nimeri is former late Sudan president. He ruled the country from 1969 to 1985. He was once a socialist and wanted everyone to be a socialist like him. Then he turned liberal and wanted everyone to resemble him. And suddenly he became a strict Muslim and demanded that those around him adopt Islamicization. In doing so, he plunged those who work with him into severe contradictions. I believe it would have been better for the intellectuals who collaborated with him to remain distant from such temperamental shifts and conflicting impulses. In this light, Tayyib Salih, knowingly or not, places himself in another dilemma when he continues to declare to the very end that he is not a political writer. At the same time, however, whenever he speaks about his works and novels, the political dimension is often the first aspect to arise. The ideological outlook of the narrator or the novelist, Tayyib Salih, does not take the form of a closed doctrinal system or an overt political discourse. Rather, it emerges as a deeply humanistic and ethical vision that aligns with universal values without reducing them to slogans. Freedom, democracy, and justice are not presented as abstract theoretical concepts, but as lived, existential experiences bound to the fate of the individual within a complex web of power, history, and culture. On the other hand, if we would like to position him in terms of religious affiliation, he has clear belonging to the Sufi popular Islam, as he used to say. However, Salih's writings, as seen in the Dome Tree of Wad Hamid, the wedding of Zain, Season of Migration to the North, and the Al-Bayt, in addition to Maryud, often stand in tension with the Salafi understanding of Islam associated with Islamist movements. His fiction clearly aligns itself with popular left Islam, traditional Sufism, and a more universal humanistic outlook that often leans leftward. In the Dome Tree of Wad Hamid and the Wedding of Zain, with their unmistakable Sufi sensibility, the writer sides with popular Islam, embodied by characters such as Hanin, Zain, Hajub Circle, rather than with the Salafi Islamist perspective represented by the village Imam. At that time, the Islamic movement tended to view Sufism as a collection of superstitions that had hindered the progress of the Muslim community and that ought to be combated in the name of true Islam, a stance that later shifted under political pressures when the movement in its various incarnations entered into alliances with certain Sufi orders for political gain. Perhaps the secret of Tayyib Salih's strength lies precisely in his refusal to submit to ready-made ideological molds. He once remarked with disarming simplicity, "I am a simple person. The devout consider me irreligious, while the boisterous think me pious." He stood in that and is a space we often fear, the space of free thought, outside rigid certainties that so easily lead to confrontation. Thus, the political dimension in the work of Tayyib Salih is subtle, structural, and deeply embedded in questions of identity, history, and power, rather than expressed through overt political commentary. Salih does not write political novels in the conventional sense. Instead, politics emerges organically from lived experience, cultural tensions, and psychological landscape of his characters. Tayyib Salih was not isolated from the political issues of his homeland. Rather, he was known for his bold views toward dictatorial regimes. He openly criticized the regime of Jafar Nimeri, and furthermore, he openly criticized the Islamist-oriented Salvation regime that ruled Sudan after 1989. In a famous article published in the 1990s titled "Where Did These People Come From?", he expressed his anger at their distortion of its identity and culture in the name of religion and national salvation. The article caused considerable controversy at the time and was regarded as reflecting the sentiments of a broad segment of opposition intellectuals. He continued writing opinion pieces on Sudanese and Arab affairs in newspapers and magazines until the later years of his life, consistently criticizing authoritarianism and advocating freedom and pluralism. Although his political stances expose him to criticism from certain conservative circles, they earned him wide respect among intellectuals as a voice of the national conscience. Salih's fictional village, Shut Hamid, often read as a microcosm of Sudanese society, is itself politically charged. Social hierarchies, communal norms, and inherited authority structures regular behavior and define legitimacy. The tension between tradition and modernity, recurring across Salih's novels, is fundamentally political because it concerns who holds interpretive power, who defines morality, progress, and social order. Authority is rarely centralized. Instead, it is diffused through customs, religion, memory, and collective expectations. So to trace the political issues that he has discussed, by the way, in his novels, and short stories, we may return back to his Handful of Dates, that famous short story. So in A Handful of Dates, by the way, here we found politics is present. Present and presence is the greed of the grandfather that the main narrator in that short story is an example of a person that tries to exploit others. At the same time, he is an example of opportunist, that he tries to benefit from people's weakness to empower, to reach, on their behalf and on their favor. And here we have the example of Mas'ud, who have been exploited by the grandfather. So a handful of dates is an example of political short story that ought to be understood in that way. The same thing applies to the dormitory of Wad Hamid. The dormitory of Wad Hamid, also the practice is there. For here we have the dispute that have been erupted first by the British ruler envoy or agent who came to the village and told the villagers that the agricultural scheme, the harbor and the steamer spot ought to be established and founded on the place of the dormitory as well as of the shrine of Wad Hamid. So another political issue continue and conflict after Sudan gained independence. Another employee came from the civilian government to the villagers and tries to convince them that the agricultural project, the steamer spot, ought to be established on the place of the dormitory and the shrine of Wad Hamid. Another dispute erupted. So amidst these differences and conflict, Tayyib Salih finally took us to be resorted to the solution of dialogue. So dialogue is to solve problems, and this is, as I told, political issue, and it has been solved when he said the place is so vast, it is sufficient enough for the agricultural project, for the steamer, for the shrine, and for the dormitory. In his masterpiece, Season of Migration to the North, politics is inseparable from the colonial encounter. Dramatizes the asymmetrical relationship between colonizer and colonized, not by depicting institutions of the state, but by staging the conflict within bodies, memories, and personal histories. Mustafa Said is not merely an individual character. He functions as a historical construct shaped by imperial power. His trajectory exposes how colonialism penetrates intimacy, desire, knowledge, and violence. Here, politics operates as a historical condition that deforms identity and destabilizes cultural belonging. So the audience, to critics and researchers, the season of migration to the north in itself, in its essence and core, is a political novel. In terms of what? In terms of expressing political issues that reflect the atmosphere of the country under colonization. And here, this novel is regarded as been taken as an example of pre-independence novels or post-colonial novels at the very same time, in which we experience how Mustafa Said, with the weapon that he has taken, how he tries to revenge from the political authority of the British rule to Sudan. So Al-Tayyib Salih, opposition to the colonial rule, is there in his writing to the season of migration to the north. It is a protest, an objection to the nature of that ruling. And as I told, we discovered and found out how Mustafa Said has revenge through the means that he has followed while he was in his daily dealings with the British ladies. I would like to reminding you that I'm presenting Tayyib Salih and politics, and here we have his views that he has expressed within his literary texts. In Bandar Shah, the political dimension becomes more explicitly historical and symbolic. Power authority appears as something layered and elusive, embedded in myth, lineage, and narrative itself. The novel interrogates how societies produce authority through storytelling, lineage, and sacred symbolism. Politics here is not simply governance, it is the struggle over meaning, legitimacy, and historical continuity. In Dawa al-Bayt, Salih alignment with popular Islam and his critique of political Islam and the notion of the religious state become even more pronounced. For example, the character Hajub, whom Salih himself acknowledged as his literary alter ego, is forced into retirement by a pious government for failing to attend the dawn prayer at the mosque. To quote him from the original text, "They retired me because I do not pray the dawn prayer at the mosque with the race." With the Rawasi will ask, "Is this serious or joke? Is this serious or a joke?" Mahjoub will reply, we have a devout government in Khartoum. The Prime Minister attends the dawn prayer at the mosque every day. If you do not pray, or if you pray alone at home, they will accuse you of lacking enthusiasm for the government. If they retire you, that is generosity on their part. This lines underscores the complete disconnect between the people and the government, lacking genuine parliamentary representation. They have no meaningful role in decision making. Government action arrives unilaterally without consultation or consent. Thus, Mahjoub retirement or forced removal becomes emblematic of a deeper tension between religion and the state, a tension that repeatedly produced governments driven more by ideological zeal than by civic rationality. In a situation both absurd and alarming, Sudan endured the alternation of religious and civilian governments as if caught perpetually between state and creed, as Mahjoub observes. They retired me because I do not pray the dawn prayer at the mosque. If you pray at home, they will still accuse you. If they retire you, that is a kindness from them. Mahjoub asked with the Rawasi in great astonishment, in great astonishment. On what charge? Al-Mahjub reply, on the charge of collusion with the previous government. This exchange between Mahjub and Rawasi suggests that the game of politics in Sudan has surpassed all political factions and has itself become a farce, a comedy, a play, tinged with bitter irony. Al-Tahir said, becoming a minister is the easiest thing these days. Anyone could become a minister by solemn oath. If Al-Turafi Wad al-Bakri does not become a minister, then I am not my father's son. Mahjub said, why would they even find him a ministry? There are no ministries left in the country. Al-Tahir replied, that would not trouble them. They could make him minister of charitable associations, or minister of granaries, or minister of steam engines, anything of those absurd portfolios. Portfolios we keep hearing about. Politics then has become open to anyone and everyone. It is no longer surprising to hear overnight that this person or that has staged a coup and become ruler of a country as vast as Sudan. The audience, just quoting from the character dialogues speaking on politics in Sudan, as has been sought by Al-Tayyib Salih in this literary work. The humor embedded in the dialogue invites not amazement but sorrow for what Al-Tahir with the Rawasi describes is precisely what unfolds in reality. Al-Tahir said, do you think it is about competence and qualification? The whole business is nothing but bluff and upon bluff. The important thing is to be eloquent and sparring in generosity. Just keep repeating, long live, join the strongest party. A few speeches here, a few banquets there, a few bribes. Before long, you find yourself a member of parliament. After that, lie back and relax. Mahjub asked, and if after entering parliament they still do not make you a minister, what then? But the Rawasi answered, if they do not make me a minister, then by solemn oath I shall stage a coup against them. Mahjub asked, and then? Al-Tahir replied, and what more is there? That is it. Lie back and relax. Whatever I want, I ring the bell. Come in, so and so. How would you? So how would you go? So and so. You. I appointed you governor. You. I make you chief inspector. You. Your case is ruined with me. Off to prison. You. Don't show me your face. And when I drive through town in my Chevrolet, people will chant, long live Tahir with the Rawasi. Just like that, I became Governor General. In these lines, Tayyib Salih compares an entire political reality into a scene of dark comedy. It is no longer inconceivable that someone like Wad al-Rawasi, by means of an acrobatic coup, might become ruler, appointing, dismissing, imprisoning at the push of a button. Politics has come to be governed by tribal loyalties, with all their noise, generosity, and hypocrisy. leaving no place whatsoever for merit. Transformation has taken place in Wethamid. So within this transformation, within that conservative environment, which is Tayyib Salih portrays in the Well-Beat as a conflict between generations, Saeed, the shopkeeper, tells his companions during their customary evening gathering, "A strange thing has happened. We do not know its beginning from its end. Our children have turned against us. The schools we open with sweat and toil have produced sons who now scrutinizes us. It seems the country has shifted beneath our feet while we slept peacefully." This was the day Bakri's sons' victory over their uncle Mahjoub and secure positions in the cooperative society. Saeed, once mockingly nicknamed Saeed al-Boom, now acknowledged Saeed Ashal Baitat, an altered reality. The altered reality. By solemn oath, there is good in this country. The country is moving toward good. O Mahjoub, the former president of the society, of Mahjoub, the former president of the society, he remarked, "You are the kind of people who either become rulers or declare that the country is ruined." Al-Tayyib Salih evokes in this fiction, which may at first appear merely an amusing narrative invention, is, in truth, in reality, a lived reality. It is a condition lamented not only in Sudan, but across many countries of the so-called Third World, and perhaps even beyond, as contemporary events repeatedly remind us. You are the kind of people who either become rulers or declare that the country is ruined. This statement that voiced by Mahjoub reveals a profound critical vision of political behavior, encapsulating a recurring human tendency toward political self-interest and narrow-mindedness. Mahjoub, as a narrative voice within the fictional world created by Al-Tayyib Salih, does not merely express an individual opinion. Rather, he embodies a mindset that has long dominated political discourse in societies seduced by power, and the example here in Sudan. In this context, the politician no longer perceives the nation as a collective entity that transcends individuals and parties, but as an arena for conflict and domination, where ruling becomes an end in itself rather than a means to serve the common good. The danger of this logic becomes evident when political disagreement turns into a zero-sum equation. Either he and his party govern, or the nation is reduced to a rhetoric of ruin and collapse. Here lies one of the central paradoxes of political discourse in the country. grand concepts such as nationalism, religion, or the protection of the state are invoked not as ethical values, but as instruments of mobilization and justification. These pretexts, despite containing partial truths, are selectively reconstructed through media narratives until they crystallize into imagined truths in public consciousness, while in essence functioning as mechanism for the reproduction of power and authority. Through this portrayal, Tayyib Salih advances a critique that transcends the historical moment of the novel to address the deeper structure of political thinking itself. He suggests that the crisis of the nation does not reside solely in proclaimed slogans, but in the psychological and intellectual mechanism governing political actors, the self-ego, the conflation of party with nation, instrumentalization of higher values for narrow interests, and the continuation rather than the resolution of division. The text further exposes a deeper tragedy. The struggle for power may ultimately become a struggle over the very definition of truth. In this sense, Tayyib Salih emerges not merely as a novelist, but as a social and political critic who interprets reality through literature. He lays bare the logic of exclusion and demonstrates how political discourse can reshape collective consciousness, transforming repeated falsehoods into accepted conventions. He also reminds the reader that the crisis of independence does not end with the departure of the colonizer, but begins with a more complex question: how is the nation to be governed and ruled? In whose interest and according to what political ethics? History consistently demonstrates that power structures, regimes, and social orders are subject to transformation. No system, no authority, and no moment of dominance remains immune to the passage of time. Change is an inherent law of collective human existence. Societies evolve, political realities shift, and what once seemed permanent gradually yields to new circumstances. Attempts to resist this movement through force may delay change, but cannot ultimately prevent it. The continuity of history rests on renewal, adaptation, and transition. Based on Tayyib Salih Views, that is the dilemma of Sudan ruling is there on the absence of the true spirit of nationalism and nationalistic approach. However, through the lens of literature, through the literary scenes, through the literary lens, Tayyib Salih always experience him calling for dialogue. And in this sense, dialogue becomes not merely a political option, but a social necessity. It acknowledges the inevitability of change and allows societies to navigate transformation without destruction, for permanence belongs to nothing in human affairs. Endurance lies only in the principle of change itself. In conclusion, we as Sudanese ought to affirm that the country is an inclusive space that embraces all without exception, and its stability can only be secured through dialogue as the most effective path for addressing problems and confronting present challenges. Dialogue is not a political luxury, but a social and ethical necessity that perceives cohesion and opens horizons of understanding. Adherence to the principle of citizenship, with its values of equality and human dignity, remains the foundation upon which coexistence is built. The country, Sudan, cannot be reduced to a single group nor monopolized by any party. It belongs to the all. By this, the audience, I came to the end of the episode, and as you listen and as you follow, we concluded, we wrapped up our encounters with Al-Tayyib Salih. We spent very long time with him, introduces parts of his contributions based on my readings, his contribution in the literary scene, in the literary text that he has provided, the Arabic library, Arabic language library, in addition to English one. We travel with him, we journeyed with him through his literary texts, tackling and addressing humanistic themes. And we conclude with him this time exploring his political views. For saying farewell, just I would like here the audience sharing the sources that I have consulted to present this episode. خالد محمد غازي، الطيب صالح، سيرة وشهادات من محطات العمر، دار الكتب المصرية، Publish Book، كايرو 2015. طيب صالح بين الإخوان المسلمين والشيوعيين بقلم. The writer here, we have the article written by عبد المنعم عجب الفيا. Publish article on Sudanese on 2 of February or the 2nd of February 2010. And then we have نبيل حمدي، بنية الانسياب السردي في رواية الطيب صالح، عرس الزين، بندر شاه، مريود، نموذجا. It is published paper on Jil Journal 2016. The Impact of Sufism on Arts by Abdul Abdullah Salih. Published book Cairo 2024 by Musawarat for publication and distribution. Till seeing you in another episode, dear audience, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.